And welcome to the Grafton Select Board meeting for April 13, 2021. Just as a preliminary matter, my name is Peter Carlson. I'll be the chair of Grafton Select Board meeting tonight. Please permit me to confirm that all members anticipated on this agenda are present and can hear me. The Select Board members, when I please call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Fazio.
Fazio, present.
Crofton.
I'm here.
Mr. Frisbee?
Here.
Ms. Roy?
Roy here.
Peter Carlson is here. And up on our agenda tonight, our staff members participate on this agenda. Town Administrator Evan Broussard.
Here.
Economic Development Coordinator for the Town of Grafton, John Allen.
Here.
Thank you. And members anticipated on the agenda tonight for entertainment license, Mr. Sean Briggs.
Here.
Economic Development Commission members, Mr. Moisen. Mr. Swenson.
Here.
Swenson here.
Mr. Perrin.
Moisten here.
Aaron here.
McAbey.
Here.
Ms. Houle.
Here.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Town of Grafton Select Board is being conducted remotely considering speakers. Executive Order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical locations. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted to the town's website at www.graftonma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature any public comment as there are no public hearings. For this meeting, the Select Board is convened via Zoom, posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that others may see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Supporting materials have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's websites as when final minutes are posted, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I will note otherwise. Just some ground rules before we turn to the first part of the agenda tonight. I will introduce each speaker in the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down and ask Select Board members, inviting each of you, please raise your hand and wait till your name is called before commenting. Please remember to mute your computer or phone when you are not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And if there are any votes that will be taken tonight, they will be conducted by roll call. Okay, first up on our order of business tonight is we have an outdoor entertainment license for Reunion Tap and Table. I have here tonight Mr. Sean Briggs, co-owner of Reunion Tap and Table, who's seeking, if you recall, an emergency license so that they may have outdoor live entertainment. Mr. Briggs, do you want to just give overview of what you're presenting tonight? And if you need me to show any of the exhibits from the proposed plan, let me know and I can screen share for you.
Sure. It's basically a similar setup to what we had last year. We have the same two tents outside. The musicians are outside of the tent. They're not actually under the tent. They're outside of the tent. But we've made a couple minor changes this year. There was some concern about, especially the one table that was on the inside of the tent near the band. That table is gone this year. We have a very direct 25-foot measurement. There's from where the performer would play, there is no seating at all within that 25 feet. There's a radius there where there's no tables at all this year. We had plexiglass last year, but we could put that back up, but that didn't seem to make a difference. So there's no plexiglass, but the nearest seat is at least 25 feet away now from the outdoor musician area. And the current plan is to have only single performers or husband, wife, or people that live together, duos, no bands until further notice, until we get more clarity on that from the state. And again, like last year, I would say, 99% of the time we were done by 9 o'clock. I think we went to 10 o'clock 2 or 3 nights last year, and it was only on the weekend. but our plan is to be done with music when the kitchen closes, and that would be typically 8 or 9 o'clock every night.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs. Mr. Broussard, did you want to give an overview of the emergency outdoor entertainment license? Any comments before I go down?
Sure. So, this is something we've run through the Viewpoint Cloud application, and that has been vetted through, in this case, it was fire, building, and the admin office being Will Blake, to then make sure that everything was satisfied to be able to then put the plan forward to you folks to vote tonight.
Great, thank you. Any of the board members want me to put up the proposed plan? Is that yes? Yes.
Yes, please.
While you do that, can I just ask Mr. Briggs a quick question about time? I saw on Sundays you wanted to start at noon, but I know you guys typically did like a jazz brunch. Is that something you wanted to bring back? I just wanted to adjust it earlier if you wanted to do music earlier.
Well, even when we did jazz brunch, we didn't start till noon. So the restaurant doesn't open until 11:30. So the musicians never started until noon. So that would be fine.
Thank you. So, Mr. Briggs, this is the floor plan in which you submitted, and
Yeah.
This is right here where you're planning to have the singer.
Exactly. So if you're looking at the plan, that section that's empty in front of the singer, there were tables there last year, but there was plexiglass hanging on the edge of the tent. I can't point to it, but there was plexiglass hanging at that top edge of the tent there. This area had tables behind it, and those won't be there this year. So,
Any questions from the board for Mr. Briggs? Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah, I do, but I can't be the only one. Does anybody else have any?
Yeah, Mr. Briggs, I do have a question on that. So on the entertainment license originally, the volume levels and stuff, can you address how you would handle, last year, a little bit different. We saw like full piece bands playing from time to time, not every night. But can you explain to the board how you would handle noise reduction from outside of that area with your neighbors?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we noticed last year was acoustic drum sets were really causing the problem. So we're not going to allow any acoustic drum sets. We have an electronic drum kit that we can turn the volume down on. If anyone is familiar with live real drums, it forces the band to get louder to keep up with the drums. And so we're not going to allow any acoustic drums this year, no real drum kits. So we have an electronic set that you can literally turn the volume down to whatever you want to match any instrument. So we're not going to allow that this year, which should help us be able to keep the volume down. I think, I don't know the exact number, but I think we received 5 or 6 noise complaints in the evenings over the period of last summer. And we had music all day, every day. So there were really, relatively speaking, from a percentage standpoint, we had very few complaints. And the nights we had complaints, it was when there were full bands there. So we're going to eliminate the live drums, which should help us keep the volume down. And again, if we get complaints from that, we'll adjust. I mean, we did turn down whenever we were asked to, and we'll continue to keep doing that. But I think overall, especially going forward right now, there's no bands scheduled. We're only going to have single acoustic performers or maybe a duo where it's like 2 acoustic guitars. And that's the plan until COVID allows us to put bands together.
Any other questions on the board? Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah, so if we're sticking with this page here, I'm looking at the radius, I suppose, from singer to tables, which is an improvement over last year. And that looks like, I can't read it here on the screen, but I read it on the packet that I received. It looks like it was about 25 feet, 23 feet, somewhere in that vicinity. That's fine. But the CDC regulations and what have been recommended to local governments is that the singers be 10 feet apart. Now, I know you said that apparently we're going with an all-married ensemble this year. It puts us in a difficult position, Sean, because what's the Board of Health supposed to do? Go around asking people for a marriage certificate? you know, so it gets
Understood.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not trying to give you a hard time here, but it's, you know, there's a slippery slope we end up going down here with our need to apply the rules evenly to everybody, and also our need to keep people safe. And what you're going to see, what we've already seen over the course of the past year is comments like, well, if I can do this, why can't I do something else? If I can sit at a bar and order a beer, why do I need to have chicken fingers to go with it? And I understand all these things. I really do. But these rules are designed to disincentivize people from being out very long, is the bottom line. And if we start making exceptions for married folks, then what about people who are vaccinated? Why can't two vaccinated people be there together? Why can't three vaccinated people be there together? What if everybody in the tent is vaccinated? And so it puts us, when we start going down this trail, it puts us in a difficult position of trying to figure out exactly what rules we should be enforcing and when. And that makes it difficult for business owners to understand what is allowed when and where. And if we start making exceptions that sound fine, you know, married couples playing music together, then what does the next guy get to do? And what does the next guy get to do after that? Wouldn't it make more sense if we just all adhered to the same rules and said the singers need to be 10 feet apart and apply that to everybody?
So if we do duos, we can still do that. So we
Okay.
easily have 10 feet on that. From the door to the edge is probably 14 feet. So we could easily separate a duo by 10 feet.
And I guess my follow-up question to that is, if you separate the duo by 10 feet, what impact does that have on the 23-foot radius that you just had with the tables?
I mean, might affect. So if you brought that
tables.
back up, that one table on the top, the one table on the top might have to not be seated. We could put a reserve sign on it or something. So if we moved the singer over 10 feet, it would affect possibly that one table there, I would imagine.
I think you're probably right about that. I'm looking at the thing. Yeah, there it is. I'm looking at that table. That's he's got it.
So I'd be willing to do that. When we do duos, we'll separate them by 10 feet and we can block off that table.
Well, let me ask you one more question while I have you. One of the other things that we have to consider when we're considering these licenses is public safety in this. And, you know, we're talking about it in terms of COVID right now, but I want to talk about it in terms of the physical setup here. You know, when we went through this last year, I think everybody was kind of running around with their hair on fire, just trying to figure out ways that businesses could remain open. You guys could make some money, people could go out and enjoy themselves, but also stay safe under COVID. And that was the idea behind having a tent in your parking lot. Now that some time has gone by and I have driven by this and I'm looking at this, it concerns me that you've got 9 tables there, maybe only 8 eventually in that one tent. And if you scroll down a little bit, where it says planters, right in front of that, you've got maybe 3 or 4 parking spaces, right?
Correct.
And it's an establishment that sells alcohol, and it doesn't even take anybody to have too many to have their foot like slip off an accelerator or a brake, back out of a parking space and hit a tent. And I worry that, you know, planters might not be enough to prevent that from happening. You know what I mean?
Sure. We had this discussion with the fire department. The planters are approximately 500 pounds when they're full of soil. And that's similarly equivalent to like the plastic jersey barriers that are acceptable. So they felt it was okay. You know, I can say this, we know our numbers. We had nearly 50,000 people go through those tents between March, or I should say between June and October of last year. And no one hit any of the planters, no one hit any of the tents. I mean,
No, and I
is it-
appreciate that. And we had the same, we had the same conversation with lifeguards at the lake. We've been operating Silver Lake for all these years. We've never had an issue. Why do you need lifeguards? But I've never need to call the police, and I've never had the fire department over my house, but I still know that I need them in case things
absolutely.
happen. So I guess, and I appreciate what you're saying about the weight of the planters. It's just the Jersey barriers are designed in a way that they're wider in the bottom and thinner on the top, so they won't topple. Planters aren't necessarily public safety devices. I'd feel more comfortable if there were even plastic Jersey barriers there. And I'm not just saying this to you. We've got, you guys are just one of a number of places that have parking lots in eateries in them. Obviously Cancun's does it and Wong's does it. And it just so happened I was at Cancun's last night picking up some food, and someone mentioned to me that either Cancun's or Wong's thought that they were required to have Jersey barriers. And if we're going to take that step, obviously we need to apply it to people evenly, and we would intend to. But I think it's something certainly worth considering for you as a business owner about, the opportunity cost here, the really minimal cost or a relatively minimal cost of having something like that in place versus the cost of what happens if something goes wrong. And that, that's why people have insurance. That's why people take steps to prevent against, although unlikely occurrences, somewhat foreseeable ones. And I would suggest to you respectfully that keeping automobiles in a parking lot full of people, there's a foreseeability there of a potential hazard.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, we're all for following any codes or any requirements that are put forth. And if they change and we need to, I'm absolutely going to comply.
Ms. Roy?
So I just did a quick Google after hearing that, and a regular Jersey barrier is about 4,000 pounds, and a plastic Jersey barrier is about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds when you fill it with water like you're supposed to. And I guess just to add on to that, the only concern I would have when we're here to discuss the entertainment license would be rubbernecking, in an active, busy parking lot. If somebody's turning their head to kind of see who's playing or who's here, and then God forbid happens. So would it be difficult to put in a Jersey barrier, or is that something you guys are open to?
I mean, if it becomes a requirement, we have to, we certainly would. I mean, as of this point, everyone involved, building and fire, said we were okay, so we didn't think we would have to. So I haven't discussed it with the rest of the guys yet, but if that's what we had to do to stay open, of course. I mean, the aesthetic of the flower plants is very much nicer for sure, but if safety is an issue, then we don't want anyone to be unsafe.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the board?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a question. It's just, Colleen's point is well taken. I mean, I sort of wondered, we're all adults in this world. There were planters and there were Jersey barriers. And, again, we sort of, when we did this last year, we're really operating under, I think, a motivation to make sure that everybody could stay open and everybody could enjoy themselves as best they could under the circumstances. As the year has gone on and as we're looking forward into this and we're starting to see social norms change and business norms change and people decide, hey, you know what? I like eating outdoors. This is something I might want to see permanently. Then we're going to have some difficult conversations. One of them is going to be safety, because a lot of these businesses don't have a ton of open space outside of their parking lots to be able to have this al fresco dining. And the other one is going to be noise, and we talked about that a little bit. And it's one thing when you're granting these one-day entertainment licenses, but when it becomes a permanent change in the use of the property, I think we do need to have serious conversations about, okay, what is considered safe and what's acceptable for the neighborhood surrounding it. I don't think we need to tackle I'm going to say this. Noise to me is less of an issue. Because again, we're all trying to get through this pandemic, and I think it's something that, if people have to deal with for a limited period of time, then it sort of is what it is. But safety in terms of the tent and the Jersey barriers is a concern of mine. I probably would not feel comfortable saying yes to this without that. I wonder if we want to talk to either the fire department or the police about why they said yes. I'm just a simple civil litigation attorney. I don't know, but it seems to me that if I hit the gas, the Jersey barrier is going to do a better job than the planter. There's a reason why they don't put planters up around the side of the road. They'd be prettier, and if they do the same job, why not? But I'd prefer to hear from them about, whether they just sort of shrugged their shoulders and said, this is what we did last year, and this is what we're doing this year, or what the story is here.
So, Mr. Prisby,
Yeah, I'm not aware.
One second,
I'm
Mr.
not
Prisby.
aware of a
Mr.
requirement for Jersey barriers. I mean, like for example, I was in Westboro last weekend. Arturo's has a 120 person tent in the middle of that parking lot, and there's no barriers of any sort. I haven't seen barriers anywhere else. I don't think it's a bad idea. I know last year the Grafton Inn had pallets, which weigh about 20 pounds each around there.
Yeah, and Sean, I'm sorry.
Whatever you guys
Sean,
decide.
I'm sorry, but that was number one. That was last year. Number
Yeah.
two, that's Westboro. This is Grafton. The
Understood.
statute that we're operating under here, Chapter 183A, gives this board final approval over entertainment
Sure.
licenses, and there are 3 criteria for approving those. In
Yep.
number one, there is a presumption that we're going to issue this. And the presumption is only overcome if the issuing authority can demonstrate that, number one, there is a public health or safety issue. And they break that up into 2 prongs. I could read the statute, I have it here, but I won't. And the third one is the noise, okay? So we become the final arbiter over what we believe is safe. Now, if you think our decision is arbitrary or capricious, then fine, you can challenge that. But at the end of the day, I'm still left here, and this board is going to be the one answering questions should something happen. And I want to feel comfortable that we've done everything reasonably possible to make people safe. Westboro can go do what Westboro wants to do. And if I were a selectman over there, I would say the same thing. Okay.
Understood.
But we need to make sure that we're doing this, I think, as safely as reasonably possible. I'm not asking you to build an enormous brick wall around the parking lot, but I do wonder, and it's I think an eminently reasonable question. Do planters do the same thing? And I'd like to hear from somebody on that.
Mr. Prisby, so we've had, fire department, building inspector, planning board. I mean, we've had several boards that have reviewed this, and I understand, the need and the want for safety. I'm for that as well. Last year, given the set of circumstances, I mean, if we had heard of a problem of someone driving through their tent last year, I think I would definitely say as a stipulation, there should be something more solid and permanent there, how I feel. I don't believe that is as much as a problem for me as, honestly, the neighbors and the noise. And I feel that if any of these complaints come back, formally to us, then, we will bring Reunion back in here, have a hearing with them, and we'll discuss it. And we will make those changes that we feel would be appropriate to mitigate whatever that situation is. But I think on good faith, let the applicant police the volume. As for the safety, if the owners of the property feel that the planters that they had are inadequate, or if police, fire department, zoning, whoever of these other department heads feel that it's required, I think it should come from them, because we depend on them to really, assure that they're protecting the public safety. I mean, entertainment, yeah, I get it, public health and stuff, but we haven't gotten any other concern from any other board. And I believe this went in front of I'm not mistaken, Board of Health, Planning, Building, Fire. I'm not sure if police had anything to do with it. I didn't see that in the memo, but I mean, we've had 4 or 5 other reviews of this already. So I want to say that, let's move this along.
Hold on a second, though. Can I respond to that for a second?
I'm not finished. Mr. Prisby, you don't have the floor. Let me finish, please. Thank you.
Okay, but can I respond with that when you're done, Mr.
Finish.
Chair?
Yes, then get me finished and I will call to you. Thank you. Jesus, now I lost my goddamn train of thought. Go ahead, Mr. Prisby.
All right, if you're done, number 1, the Board of Health doesn't have jurisdiction over that. Number 2, Planning Department. Are we asking Dave Robbins and Bob Hassinger what should be there for barriers? Number 3, we're not sure if the police reviewed it. Number 4, yeah, I would like to talk to the fire department and find out why they think planters are as good as Jersey barriers. I don't think that's asking a lot. And I don't care. And I'm sorry, you wait till I'm done now.
You're going to go
I don't
last.
care what happened
You're out of
last
order,
year.
Mr. Prisby.
I'm sorry,
out of
I'm
order.
not.
You're out of order, Mr.
I
Prisby.
think your personal relationship with these guys is affecting your judgment right now, Mr. Chair.
No, sir. I am here for a outdoor music license. That is
As are we all, and I'm asking simple questions, just like I did last year to the last chair until I was shouted down about what's reasonable here. And it always happens when people know each other that I'm the one getting shouted down. That's how it goes around here, and I'm tired of it. So no, I've got a reasonable question. Is the Jersey barrier the same as a planter, and why can't I talk to the person who made that decision?
I don't think anyone's denying you to talk to the person who made that decision, Mr. Prisby. No one here said that. You can't talk to that person. Is there another question by the board? Ms. DeFazio?
I think Ms. Roy had her hand up first. She can go first if she'd
I'm
like.
sorry, Ms. Roy?
Thank you. My question is to Mr. Briggs, and this is more of a bigger picture kind of thing where outdoor dining started with COVID, but I know that a lot of people are excited to see it continue past COVID if possible. And while a Jersey barrier might not be necessarily a requirement right now, is that something that maybe you could just kind of talk to your establishment about and maybe just do it anyway, even if it's not required, like going above and beyond, so that hopefully it's something that can continue out in the future past COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly want everyone in our parking lot to be safe. I don't want anyone to get hit by a car in the tent. So yeah, I mean, we put those there on purpose to have a barrier. We were never asked to put Jersey barriers in, even until just now. I wasn't told it was a requirement. I'm not sure it is a requirement by fire or police. They have both been here and both looked at it. If it was a requirement, we certainly would do it. I think there might be some other options. There's the concrete posts that take up less space that could be driven into the sidewalk temporarily. So there's those sort of things. And I'll certainly talk to the guys about it. And we're not against doing whatever is necessary. I mean, the way you enter our parking lot, the cars that are parked in front of the tent, unless you ran over the curb off the street to hit the tent, it would be a colossal accident on its own. But just backing out of a parking spot, I mean, I don't know how no one's going fast across that parking lot. It's not like they come raging in. The spot where you enter goes down the side of the building and the tent's not there. So that's the fire lane and there's easy access there. So by the time people come around and pull in front of the tent, they're already going at parking lot speed because they have to come from the other side of the plaza to pull into those spots. So they've entered down at the Chinese restaurant side of the plaza to come in there. If you come in off the tent side, you can't go that way because the parking spots are angled in the wrong direction. So people drive back around the building and then come up and park. So it's not like anyone's coming in full speed at that section of the parking lot. I think it's part of the reason we had no issues. But of course, we'll look into it.
I've witnessed a parking lot car accident where a woman had her arm in a sling. She got caught on there and she was in a parked position and she flew up over a parking barrier and into oncoming traffic and T-boned a car that wasn't expecting her at all. So I know how fast and quick these things can just happen. So I guess that's what I'm saying. I know it's not necessarily a requirement now, but going above and beyond might not be a bad thing in this situation is all I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I'll discuss it with them.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Fazio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really a comment, and that is that, you know, I hear Mr. Prisby's point on this in the sense that, you know, as we're not just looking at reunion, we're looking at the scope of all restaurants in Grafton moving forward past COVID. You know, and this may be something that we're realizing residents really like and appreciate in the warm weather. And we as board members and the executive body of this town want to make sure that we're supporting restaurants and we're supporting residents, and we're keeping everybody safe, or help to keep everybody safe in these establishments in town. So I mean, I think Jersey barriers are so ugly, but that being said, I would choose that as a public safety measure over aesthetics. However, I feel like this kind of stuff is going to continue to come up. And what I don't want to do is not award an entertainment license tonight, because we're constantly coming up with better ways to improve it. I would rather approve this license, go back to, you know, the police chief, the planning board, whoever we want to have discussions with, or have a discussion right now as a board of, are we going to add this to the requirements of all our Grafton restaurants, which I'm pretty sure we can do that as well. But I also want to be mindful of supporting these establishments who have gone through so much this past year, and you know, are willing to work with us. And if we can kind of forge ahead on this and say, okay, you know, this is something maybe once we open up and we all start going out to these places again, how else can we improve upon this? I think the restaurant owners will be, you know, the most to be able to give us feedback on how it's going and how to make it better. But yeah, I mean, so I'm like, it's a good suggestion, but I also don't want to, I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and I think we need to move forward tonight and take action as well.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Austin?
Yeah, I agree with much of what Mr. Fazio just said. You know, at the end of the day, this board does bear a significant responsibility for public safety when it comes to these approvals. In my case, though, I trust the building department and the fire department to have evaluated the situation. I don't think it's a bad thing for us to go back and ask them about this particular concern. I'm fine with that. But I think we should move forward with approving this license. There's a couple of things, though, that I want to be kind of crystal clear on. Those singers have to be 10 feet apart. If we're talking about requirements, that is the requirement. And I do not want to be putting anybody in town in a situation where they have to guess whether two people live together or are married, in a situation where they're driving by and have a concern. So, and again, we're talking about every business that's going to come before this board and ask for outdoor entertainment. So it's not special to any business, but it's a hard requirement for me. I want to be crystal clear about that. And the second thing is, you know, I think this board needs to be very proactive with dealing with concerns going forward. And we need to make sure that we have a very open communication with any concerns that are brought forth. So Sean, I want to be very clear. Let's keep these lines of communications open. If there are complaints, let's deal with them proactively. I do not want to be dealing with this stuff on the back end where either you or the town feels aggrieved in any way. We have to be communicating. We have to be dealing with these things as they come up in a constructive way. So those are my two main things.
Okay, I agree.
All right, any other questions from the board? Okay. At this point tonight, motion in front of us tonight would be approving emergency outdoor entertainment license for Reunion Tap and Table. If there's any further discussion, I can entertain a motion at the time.
I move the board vote to approve the emergency outdoor entertainment license for Reunion Tap and Table.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion of approving the emergency license? Mr. Prisby.
Yeah, so what we haven't talked about yet was just sort of the hours on the entertainment. 9 p.m. is late for, we did get noise complaints, and we're trying to strike a balance here with the neighborhood between what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. If you're trying to get to bed and you can hear it, 9 p.m. on a Sunday is late. I mean, I can't even get dinner anywhere in Grafton at 9 p.m. on a Sunday, so I don't understand why it needs to go.
We close at 8 o'clock on.
One at a time, please, everybody. Thank you. Mr.
We're in
Brisby?
discussion. So, again, 9 p.m. on a Sunday seems late. It's Friday, Saturday, whatever, but I'm not sure it needs to be that late on a Sunday. I mean, let's give a little bit to the neighborhood here with an understanding that they're having to put up with something here that they didn't have to put up with before. And it wasn't part of the deal when they moved in. I don't know what it means. It says estimated times of entertainment 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And then it says Monday through Sunday, a 9 p.m. end time. So that, we're allowed to issue these and then put in our own conditions. You don't have to vote it up or down. This can be approved with conditions of approval. So if you want to make a change, you can make a change.
Yeah, Mr. Brisby, I think you bring up a good point on the motion tonight. I mean, I'm looking at estimated times of entertainment 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., but yet Monday through, for the whole week, it says 12 to 9 p.m., right? Personally, I mean, we did get emails last year. We did get complaints at the hour in which these, the music was held. Do you have to play till 9 p.m.? I don't know, but I would like to see something a little bit. I mean, we could amend it a bit if you want tonight. I would agree with that, Mr. Roy.
I believe Mr. Briggs just said they close at 8 on Sunday, so they wouldn't be playing until 9. So I don't know if 8 o'clock works for everybody, but I think we should probably start there and amend it to 12 to 8 on Sunday. Just in case their hours do change in the future, we know 8 is their hard stop on Sundays.
I'm sorry, Mr. Often or Mr. Fazio? I'm sorry, I was taking notes.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Pritchard, you bring up a good point. I think we should just talk generally about, what our hours should be. I think, Fridays and Saturdays clearly for the businesses are going to be much more valuable to play that extra hour as opposed to the rest of the week. So, I'd be open to discussion about, a 9 o'clock end time on Friday, Saturday, or even Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and 8 o'clock on the rest of the week. To just, try to be a little bit more reasonable to all the neighbors around town that might be around these businesses. I think that makes sense.
Mr. Fazio?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you, question for Mr. Briggs. Is the schedule now 9 o'clock every night except Sunday, 8 p.m.? You're muted.
Currently, Monday through Thursday, the kitchen closes at 8. People can dine later than that, but it's Friday, Saturday is 9 p.m. and Sunday is 8 p.m. as well. Sunday, 8 p.m. is not an issue at all. We very rarely have diners here at 8 p.m. on a Sunday. That would be very rare.
And what about Monday through Wednesday? Do you have diners?
8 p.m.
8 p.m.
The kitchen closes at 8. We keep the bar open longer, but if that was the deal breaker, that's not a problem. We could certainly deal with that.
So in terms of the entertainment license, it wouldn't hurt business at all to stop music at 8 o'clock on those weekdays?
I don't think so. No.
Because I wouldn't want to hurt business, but at the same time, I have to agree with my board members that after the complaints we got from the neighborhood last year, and I know that it was, one specific person, but we wouldn't be doing our job if we're not mindful of, the community at large. And I think that's a reasonable request.
I agree. I'm familiar with every restaurant in town and every owner, and many of them are closer to homes than we are and in more residential areas. So I just would like to request that it be fair across the board and doesn't create an unfair advantage. If the Grafton Inn can stay open until 11, he's got 10 houses within earshot of us. We have 2. So it's like we have one noisy neighbor complaining about us, which I get. I don't want to upset her, but as long as it's not an unfair advantage, I'm willing to play ball with anybody. We're all about rules. So let's follow them.
Mr. Chair, can I answer that?
Sure.
Yeah, so I would agree to that this would be an across the board policy for all restaurants, and, you know, perhaps even something that if there is no complaints, because I know you said you changed the drummer or something. I don't know exactly what it is because I'm not a musician, but I trust that, you know, you guys are working on lowering the noise level. You know, it could be midsummer, and this is something the board can again reevaluate and say, hey, you know, it's light out until 9 o'clock now. People are out, and, you know, is this something we want to change? So, but I appreciate your comments and working with us.
You just, Mr. Frisbee.
Yeah, I just want to add to that too. You know, and I want to emphasize that what we're looking for, Sean, is an across the board consistency with all the businesses in town. And because number one, our ability to be in office and maintain public confidence sort of depends on our ability to treat people fairly. And also our ability to, and, you know, Carl is here from the EDC tonight, to help generate revenue through economic development. And we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we created an environment where you guys weren't sure what the rules were on a day-to-day basis. Why the rules apply here, but not to somebody else. That's very, very important to me. On the other hand, what you've got to understand is when you're applying rules under Chapter 183A, as we are here, and we're talking about unreasonable increases in noise, people's geography plays a part in that. You know, if you're closer to homes than other people are, that sort of plays a part in it, right? So like if you go up to Highfields, and Highfields have got a tent on the 18th green, and there's nobody for a couple hundred yards in either direction, and there's a bunch of trees and everything in the way, they're going to get less noise complaints than you are, because you are within earshot of people that are immediately behind you. And it's just sort of a factor. And so some of this stuff, not all of it, but some of it gets played out on a case-by-case basis. And we all want to be as fair to you as humanly possible so that you can go on operating the business in the way that you want to. I have no idea how to operate a restaurant. I don't want to know. I don't want to tell you how to do it. All I do know is there are basically two discrete criteria that we have to evaluate here. Number one is safety. Number two is noise. And if you guys can keep the noise down, then you've taken care of one of these things for us, and I appreciate that.
Is there Ms. Roy, go ahead.
So just thinking into the future, and I'd love to hear what Mr. Briggs has to say about this first, is if we're worried about noise and the entertainment license, is there a number we want to hit, like say after 10 complaints, we tone it down and you have to stop at 6. After 15 complaints, we suspend you for 2 weeks. You know, is there some kind of mechanism we want to put in place now rather than try to figure it out later?
The motion on the board tonight is to approve the license. I think we can come up with any policy about, you know, out of X number of complaints for noise, we can choose to bring people in if we feel we need to have a hearing about it, like we did earlier. But that's just an option, Ms. Roy, I think we could take without
just for the across the board feel, though. I'd rather come up with it tonight so that reunions first, they're here first, so they leave here knowing what it is, and then we tell everyone going forward that this is how it came up. And maybe I'm on an island, but I hate how with all of this we feel like we get the problem and then we try to figure out the solution. Maybe we can be a little proactive this time. And like he said, I don't think he had more than how many ever complaints. So is 10 a reasonable thing to say, wow, 10, that is a lot. We didn't get anywhere near that last year. And is that a high enough marker that warrants the discussion? Or is it something as little as 2 where we're saying, okay, come on in, we got 2, what else are we supposed to do?
So Colleen, I can tell you, I've seen this play out where businesses have been run out of communities by a particularly vocal group of people who are going to complain and complain and complain and complain until they reach your marker. And then that business gets disadvantaged while other businesses that are a little more popular, a little more spread out, thrive. So no, I mean, unfortunately, this isn't a situation where you can be proactive. This is a situation where you have to evaluate, You have to evaluate this situation based on what is going on and what is being proposed here. And in this particular case, you've got one or two people who are going to play plugged in acoustic instruments or an electric drum set. And we're going to have to evaluate based on the complaints that we receive going forward, whether the complaints are articulating an unreasonable increase in noise. And there are some people out there who think that any noise that they hear outside of their own, outside of somebody else's property is unreasonable. I live next to a restaurant and I don't have to hear that noise. I didn't hear it before, and now I hear it, and that's unreasonable. Well, no, that's not true. You're going to hear noise off of Worcester Street. You're going to hear noise off of the restaurant. You're going to hear noise off of a bunch of different businesses. But there is a sort of subjective analysis about this where what you consider reasonable and what I consider reasonable might be two completely different things. And at the end of the day, the board needs to make a determination if this keeps going on. Is this person sort of hypersensitive to noise? Or does this person have a point? And the noise, by virtue of the information we receive of the police, is the noise too much? And unfortunately, I think that's sort of a conversation for another day. If it keeps going on, then we'll have to reevaluate. But right now, all we've got is a couple of complaints and a promise that they are shifting their business operations to do better. If you start making a blanket policy about numbers, then I think you're getting outside the scope of the statute, which sort of requires a determination about reasonableness based on the facts before you.
I agree with you, Mr. President. I think police reports or something that's egregious would need attention versus, getting numerous kind of consistent complaints, even though, it's not, I guess it's all subjective, right, at the end of the day. And I guess we have to read into each one of these individually and make a decision. Mr. Often.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, what do you need to set conditions on the motion? So I'm going to propose that we.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Often. Yeah.
I'm going to propose that we set conditions of no later than 8 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and Friday and Saturday till 9 for this license. And this is the discussion that we'll have with all the businesses going forward.
Ms. Roy, will you second that amendment? Or would you make a motion for that amendment that Mr. Often made?
Sure. Do we want to do Sunday through Wednesday or Sunday through Thursday? Just I know Thursday can be a pretty popular night as well. And to Mr. Fazio's point, as it gets light later, I don't know. Is that what you want, Matt? You want Sunday through Thursday, or?
It would be, I guess it'd be Sunday through Wednesday, sorry. And then
okay,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday would be 9. Yep.
Okay. So I amend my motion. I move the board vote to approve the emergency outdoor entertainment license for Reunion Tap and Table with music times of Sunday through Wednesday, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. and Thursday through Saturday, 12 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Right, do I have a second on that amendment?
Second.
Motion made, second on the amendment on the adjustment of the hours Sunday through Wednesday. Sunday to Thursday. Mr. Brisby, you had your hand up. I'm sorry. When Mr. Often was speaking, did you have another question?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on the motion?
So Peter,
Okay.
I think you just said Sunday through Thursday again, but it's really Sunday through Wednesday until 8, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday until 9. I just didn't want you to write it down wrong.
Thank you.
Yeah, just further discussion for me. I think that taking a week to have someone come back in. I mean, we're taking this up in a workshop anyway. To take a week to have somebody come back in and talk a little bit about the safety issues inherent in operating in a parking lot like this, I think is worthwhile. Sean brings up a good point. They do it in Westboro. Okay, fine. But, I'm sitting here as a member of this board in Grafton. And look, I do what I do for a living too. I do torts. I see what happens when cars hit people. So, I know a little bit about this myself. And I would feel better if someone explained to me what standards we were using here Because a lot of times what happens in local committees in boards is everybody thinks it's somebody else's issue. Oh, that's not me, that's them. And that's how bad government gets created, in my opinion, when everybody wants to ignore an obvious problem because it's not really in their bailiwick. So I just kind of want to make sure, and I don't think that's too much to ask. Until I have that conversation, I'm a no. I would otherwise like to be a yes.
Yeah. I think a little bit more on that too. And I think the topic of safety is important to us. There are other places outside of Union, just based on this one condition that, I feel, could warrant even further discussion, Swirls and Scoops being one of them, the hot dog stand, Koopman Lumber. I'm thinking when, the Home Field, has one of its events in its parking lot too, the use of parking lots, right, where vehicles are traveling, are all susceptible to an accident waiting to happen. But the more I'm hearing this tonight, the more I'm thinking that this could be a bigger discussion, Mr. Prisby. Any other further discussion on the motion in front of us tonight? Okay, seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, I.
Sorry, I went out of order. Mr. Prisby?
Yay.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried 4-1. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Briggs, for coming in tonight.
Thanks, guys. And we will keep communication open. And if you guys start seeing emails and complaints or anything, please let us know. A lot of times we didn't even get told till after the fact. So just keep us in the loop and we'll do our best. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs.
All right. I want to, next up, we have Economic Development Commission. We wanted to have a workshop with the commission tonight. I did ask Mr. McGoldrick kind of late in the game if he could make it, but he was unavailable. So with us tonight, we have Economic Development Commission. We wanted to discuss basically the current charge. Wanted to get some input and have an open discussion just on, is the current charge of our Economic Development Commission effective? Can it improve? Is there things that we can make adjustments to that would empower EDC to service Grafton more on developing and growing its commercial base, as well as supporting existing businesses? So I want to welcome you all here tonight. Is there anyone from the select board that would like to kick off the discussion? Ms. Roy.
I do. I'm trying to open up their charge right now, but specifically part of your charge, your membership is very prescriptive of you need a business owner, you need a this or that and the other thing. And I wanted to know currently, who do you have, because you do have an opening right now, and what requirements are going to need to be met for that opening when people do start submitting applications or interest?
The person needs to be a small business owner.
Did you have any other comment, question? I'm sorry.
All right. So yeah, I'll keep going. So how is it going? Because a lot of what I hear from EDC is how you guys are supporting existing businesses. And like you see in the email that Mr. Moisen and I shared, is that a way to help bring in new business and develop businesses. So I was wondering where you guys are going with that and what plans you have beyond just supporting our existing businesses.
Well, each year we run a couple of seminars to help business owners grow their business by educating them on different topics, everything from SBA to finance to digital marketing to social media. We're doing that on a regular basis. Writing a business plan, it's very important. Some people are under the impression that you write a business plan and it's done. We're under the impression, or strong belief, we hold the strong belief that you should revisit your business plan every year. We conduct seminars to educate people on how to do it. They don't need to do a formal plan, and we educate them on things like that. What's happening is, as you know, we have 8 Pine Street that's in the process of going through its process to being built. We've started laying the groundwork and starting to look for businesses that we can influence who the tenants are. Clearly, we're not the landowners or the landlords, so we don't have a choice of that. But through a process we're trying to do is to bring the businesses that people in Grafton would like to see. So that way, when the landlord has a choice of 2 tenants, and we're saying, these are the preferred tenants, they'll select those people. With the larger businesses, we're currently marketing land to attract some of the larger businesses. We've recently started having discussions over Fisher Mill Bill. That was a piece of property where there were some challenges in helping the owner to see the true value of the land and what's identifiable, what that land could be used for. Through having discussions with a person who's also a partner, he's seen the opportunities that he was unaware of, and he's now actively talking to potential builders, and we've actually referred people to them. And we also have the property, the 34 acres on Westboro Road, where it's now being marketed. And we did brochures 2 years ago on being headquarters for biomedical manufacturing, and they're actually using those brochures in the marketing.
So just to circle back to 8 Pine Street, that was a good point I wanted to ask. Do you guys work as sort of a liaison for bigger projects like 8 Pine, or working with GSX in general, and making sure that all the boards and committees in town are working as effectively as possible? I know recently GSX came in and met with conservation, and they had to wait around about 10 or 15 minutes because there wasn't even a quorum available to meet. So is that something that EDC can kind of touch base with everybody and say, hey, we have GSX coming in, are you guys ready for tonight? Or is that kind of out of your scope?
We basically ensure that, like in your case, you're using GSX, we ensure that they go before the different boards, and the different boards are managed by different people, but we ensure that there's a strong handoff, that the people know that GSX is coming before them, and they have the paperwork that they need to be educated and to make decisions.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah, so I just want to piggyback on that a little bit. So, that's one of the biggest projects that's happening, and it's going to happen in Grafton in quite some time. To have a developer turn up to a even slightly disorganized meeting just isn't a good look for us. And I'm not sure who, I guess this question's to Mr. Broussard. Where do you see this landing? I see we've got a situation where, and it wasn't just one business that was going before that commission that night. How do we grease the wheels a little bit to make sure that interactions with town are smooth and organized, and things are proceeding in a way that can move these projects forward as quickly as possible. I know, we're struggling a little bit in planning in particular. So, we brought in another building inspector, for example. What else can we be doing to make sure that this is going well?
So, from a general standpoint, we do development team meetings once a week, and we meet with these developers ahead of time. And the purpose of that is to kind of vet out different parts of their project and make sure that they're conforming before they even get to the board level, so that they have a little bit easier of a time to navigate that process. I know that John and Chris both do a lot of work to try to streamline these larger companies, or actually any development project, their entry into these different areas of which they need to be able to navigate. So whether it's conservation or planning or whatever it is, one of the things that we need to look at is, and we were having this conversation with the Soldiers Monument folks the other day, is who's on the committee, and are they still, able to fulfill their role? If they're not, that's okay, and we can thank them for their service, and the board would have to make a decision at that point. Or, is it something that we can do with our full-time staff or our paid staff to then make this an easier process for those committee members that are giving their time as well. And so one of the things that John and Chris and Will and myself will have a conversation about is how to, again, streamline their entry into that. And then also, is this conservation thing an anomaly, or is it a consistent issue that we're running into? Because, I've been doing this for 7 years, and I can tell you in many towns, when boards you go before a board and they fail to meet quorum, and then you got to come back in a month. And it's not a good way to do business, but most assuredly. So first question is this an anomaly? Did we have, somebody got stuck in traffic, or, their kid wouldn't go to bed? Not that happens at my house or whatever, but, those type of things. And then if it is a consistent issue, then we need to look at makeup of the board and things like that. But I have spoken, several times with GSX, and I know I've been in meetings with John and Chris and Will, Mr. Berger, all of us trying to, make that larger project go smoothly. And the one thing that I was really, kind of psyched about after my first couple is, one, the just sheer amount of positive feedback I get about John Allen in those meetings, which is, unsolicited, which is very nice to hear. And I think he should be commended on the work that he's doing. But also that if you're putting in, we have the same conversation with somebody that's putting in, wants to do a project that winds up creating, a very small project, one house, two houses, whatever it is, all the way up into a GSX size thing. You get the same floor. And I think that's a really cool thing that we're doing here. So to circle back actually to the question you asked at the beginning of that, I think it's two parts. One, is this something that we actually have a problem with that's happening consistently? And two, how do we just make sure that we come across as the most, professional town that we can be to get these big projects to come here, and then other ones to want to come after they see how well it went. I think we're doing a large portion of that already. I think we just need some refinement.
Thanks. And just if it's okay, I've just had one other question. I guess to the broad EDC committee, is there more that we could be doing to be bringing developers to Grafton? It's good that we're supporting businesses and helping them to grow and supporting, developers that are coming here. I guess, when we think about how to grow revenue in Grafton, we want to be moving as far ahead in the pipeline as possible to have those long lead conversations with developers for stuff that might not happen for 5, 6, 10 years even. For things like Fisherville and that you mentioned, that's a good one. I've had some conversations with Chris about, he's thinking about putting some money into some zoning overlay work and whatnot to try to make that a little bit more attractive. Like, that's the type of stuff that I love to see. I'm just wondering, part of the charge is around coordinating and participating in Chamber of Commerce's, and is there more that we could be doing in that area to get further, ahead in the conversations and to have a more robust pipeline, I guess, for the properties that are marketed like Fisherville, where we kind of have some ideas as to how things could go, and and for other properties around town, because there's a lot of those that are just kind of waiting for developers to come and do something and make proposals.
As easy as your question sounds, it's not an easy answer. First of all, it's largely dependent upon who owns the land and what their goals, expectations are. We as a town or as a committee cannot change that, although we can influence them about what the current market is. If you look at 8 Pine Street and 17 to 27 Upton Street, where the town owned that, we were able to facilitate that transaction a lot more easily. We, as a town, as a committee, as a board, what we can do is we can prepare the land with the zoning necessary to make it attractive to a developer. And if something comes up, be able to address it. So like, let me talk about 1727 Upton Street. As much as we did to prepare that for sale, there's still some environmental hazards there. So as a town, maybe what we could have done is did more investigations to address those environmental hazards, to quantify that better for a prospective buyer, and to address that more clearly, resolve those issues. Those are things that we can do to try and make things. If it's private development, take like Fisherville Mill, well, the state's invested $2 million into cleaning up those environmental hazards. That's an investment. That's significant. That's not just holding hands. With that said, the current owner invested money and he's looking to get his return on that as well. So there's economics as to what's happening that are market economics that we can't control. All we could do is position it so when the economics turn, that it works to our advantage and those properties can be sold and developed in a way that meets the town's desires and expectations. Evan, would you want to comment?
1 second, Mr. Allen. Mr. Frisbee, you had your hand up. You wanted to comment on that first before Mr. Broussard?
Yeah, you know, John, I hear you. And this is what I always tell people when they ask us about economic development, and everybody who is sitting in this meeting, who's on this board right now, and Dennis too. Hey, Dennis, has, you know, campaigned on a platform of economic development, and yet you get to this position, and what you quickly find is you actually don't control economic development, which is tough because you promise people that and you want to deliver on that. And that is the thing that's supposed to help assuage some of the tax increases that residents have been living through over the course of the past decade. Economic development will help us. And market conditions are what they are. We can't control that. So if nobody wants to buy the piece of either town-owned land or commercial land in town, then there's really nothing that we can do. But what we can do is we can make sure that we are marketing ourselves as best as we can and reaching out and trying to network a little bit and figuring out which developers are looking, who's building, what's going on right now. So I guess my question to you is, to what degree can we as a board assist in the marketing efforts that would make people aware that, for instance, off of Worcester Street over by Cumberland Farms, between Williams and Joncas Terrace, there is an enormous piece of land that we were once considering a gateway to North Grafton. On the other side of Grafton, over by the Common, there is another gateway to South Grafton there. What more can we do?
Well,
practically speaking.
Let me start by saying that we have reached out to developers that we thought could be interested. In particular, we did that for 8 Pine Street, the 17 and 27 Upton Street. So we are reaching out to developers. So we are telling them what's going on. Prior to COVID, I was going to a lot of events where there would be developers and prospective people who might be willing to do investments. So we are doing that. Now, you just brought up an interesting point. If you are aware of other parcels of land that the town doesn't own that you feel that should be developed, and that owner is willing to see that development through, please give them to me. And what we could do is we could start incorporating that into our marketing.
Well, that plot of land that I was talking about, we already discussed, I think it was like 3-4 years ago. We're talking about the land in front of Wyman Gordon. We're talking about the land between Williams and Joncas. We're talking about, the South Grafton thing we own. There is the mill in South Grafton that has been trying to be developed since forever.
Well, let's talk about Wyman Gordon's, if you don't mind.
Sure.
That land is actively being marketed. It's kind of being marketed in a, it's being marketed. We've had interactions with the owners of Wyman or managers of Wyman Gordon's. We've expressed what we'd like to see developed there, but we're not in charge of that.
Right. And I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. What the last thing I heard was that it was, they were talking about a storage facility there. Is that still in play? Do you know?
I can't answer if that's the current plan or not. I don't know.
1 second. Mr. Moisen, before you go that, I know Mr. Allen directed to you. Mr. Broussard, did you want to comment, or do you want me to just go on to Mr. Moisen?
You can just go on to Mr. Moisen. He can answer any knowledge he has, and then we can circle back with Mr. Allen.
So actually, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 years ago. It's probably more like 3 years ago. We actually collected funds and paid for a study to propose or actually help facilitate a hotel being developed there, if I'm thinking about the right parcel. So we actually, I know there are several businesses in town donated monies and collected those monies and utilized those monies for the study. The study ended up being disappointing, I guess would be the best way to put it. So those things are happening, Ed, I think. And I guess the perfect example is things never happen the way you want them to happen or in quickly as you happen. We look at the property that UPS bought. I can tell you I was on the committee during that time. We had several meetings with UPS. We had several meetings with the different folks, their lawyers. I went to a TIF committee. We got them the tax breaks, et cetera, yet it sits there vacant, not doing anything. And that's their prerogative. That's what they have the ability to do. So it's frustrating from a committee standpoint is that we try to get these things moving in the right direction, and then boom, it's the other business or the business at hand, the business that own that dictates what they want to do, and it just becomes a standstill. So it's frustrating.
If I can just respond to that for a second, I totally feel your frustration there. UPS was something that, if you recall, this board went back and forth on just a few years ago about projections for income there. And it's always really difficult to determine exactly what you're going to get out of a particular sale, because again, as you said, number one, we don't control the market. And then, once you enter into a contract for the sale of land to a particular corporation, you can't control the internal decisions of the corporation. They're going to do what they want to do. And now they're sitting on real estate, and I'm sure they're happy to take the deduction and let the real estate appreciate to the extent that it does. I guess what I'm wondering is if there's anything that we can do on a project by project basis to better market ourselves. For instance, if you remember, when Amazon was coming to Massachusetts, we did a really great video that had me convinced for like 30 seconds that we had a shot right there. I mean, that was such a good video that I was like, damn it, that makes all the sense in the world. Why wouldn't you come to Grafton? And I wonder if that is something that, again, I want to be able to articulate a role for this board to be able to assist economic development. And it's really difficult to do because, as individual members, we don't have any expertise in economic development. All we have is some really detailed knowledge of how the town works and a vision for what it could be, which I think it's important, but I know it's not going to kind of carry the day.
If I may add one thing, Mr. Frisbee, to that, and Mr. Allen, you said something very interesting that, 8 Pine Street, 27 Upton Street was easier for you to reach out to developers. What would it, how would you envision if we can make it easier for you to reach out to any landowner that is commercially viable and bridge them with developers. I mean, you've done that with, in front of Wyman Gordon. I think UPS kind of fell on us when there was an interest from them to purchase that land. But what do you feel, or how do you feel, or even how does the commission feel that it can be empowered to have easier conversations like it was with, I know we controlled 8 Pine and 27 Upton, but what do you all feel that would make it easier for you to talk to other landowners and talk to developers about plans? Ms. DeFazio or Ms. DeFazio was up first.
I'd rather have, thank you, Mr. Chair, but I'd rather have other commission members talk first, since I'm obviously the select board rep. I do have some ideas to help support this commission, but I definitely want to hear from other members first. So I want to go ahead. That's fine.
Ms. Holt?
Kind of piggyback on what Carl brought up, and I was John did not, which was the study on the hotel. Things like that, where one of the reasons we went ahead and did that was because the hotels won't do it for themselves. They want it done, and they want you to be able to say, look, we can already say to you, look, this is viable. I believe this is before my time being on the EDC. Something similar was done when we were hoping to, and are still hoping to, market some of the industrial park property for the biotech, where we had to make sure that we had the proper regulations and other things in place. One of the other things that John had to do some digging on, and this was helpful when we went for Pine Street, was, gee, it didn't look like we had any commercial rates for water. So if you looked at our water rates and you were a business, you were going, whoa, I'm not going near that place. And John was able to find out that, well, no, actually there are commercial rates. So not only did we have to know they existed, but we need to make sure that, potentially interested developers, purchasers, et cetera, would also know about them. It doesn't do any good for us to know. We need to make sure that these people do. One of the other things that we've been talking about is, looking at our sign law. What other bylaws, what other zoning regulations are the types of things that the EDC can now approach the planning board, the zoning board, and say, hey guys, we might be getting in our own way here. And here's why we think that's true. Or I know John on at least 1 or 2 parcels has thought, maybe a little bit of different zoning here, could be to our advantage. So those are among the things the EDC can do. And Peter, to answer your question, I would say that the biggest thing would be to, and Doreen, this is going to address you as the select board liaison. Make sure you've got an ear to what the EDC is doing. I think sometimes they've just kind of existed off in a corner, and every so often people say, oh yeah, they're doing something great, we're happy. I think a little more constant communication between the boards is probably a good thing. I think the number one thing that John has done that I think's really helped is with our existing businesses, especially our small businesses. Those programs he's run have really raised the visibility of the EDC and as a result of the town. And I think that's been very good for us.
Mr. Moisen, and then Mr. Broussard and Mr. Swenson.
I think Mr. Prisby makes a great point, and I think as elected officials, you're all on the hot seat with regards to economic development, and you're always asked what's going on within the town about that. And I think we probably should be a little bit more self-promoting. And what I mean by that is, you should know that we had a hotel study done. You should know that we helped facilitate tax credits for the UPS facility. You should know that we worked on the water rates, et cetera, et cetera. You should know that we've worked on the sign regulations and rules about signs and so on and so forth. So those are all things that are happening behind the scenes that we probably should tout as economic development initiatives. And you should probably have a little card of what are we doing economically development wise? Well, we did this, we did this, we did this. And those things would make your lives a little easier when you're asked that. because all these things happen behind the scenes. They all happen in different stages. Can anyone say that they've seen the marketing pieces that we put together? Yeah, so we should you should have those as well. Do you know what I'm saying? You should have those particular pieces to say, hey, guess what? We are marketing. The town does have this, lot of land to develop. I mean, John and I have sat down with a couple of different realtors, making sure that they know that there are properties within Grafton that could be developed. It was almost an hour-long meeting with one out of Boston that he had somebody that he was looking at a parcel, just so happened didn't work out. But those things are happening. And it's hard to convey those things when you're you're doing your normal scenario, your normal day-to-day life. And we should give you better pieces or better promotional materials on what we are doing when you're asked those questions.
Ms. Roy.
So I just wanted to circle back to the commercial water rate thing. I know that happened a few years ago, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that it was determined that that wasn't going to be feasible, because I thought I had heard that, a pharmaceutical company, for example, they want a lower water rate because they're going to be using far more water than, an average commercial development. So did that actually go anywhere? Did that just get looked into and then kind of go stagnant?
Well, we looked into and we advocated for it. Grafton's very unusual in the sense that we don't own our own water supply. And it's privately owned, and they sell it to us at the rates they want to. And the response we got was, bring it to us and we'll talk. So there's no firm commitment.
Grafton Water District is not privately owned. It's its own municipality. It's an elected board of directors. They hold regular public meetings that are posted on a regular basis. It used to be a privately owned company. The history was Grafton tried to take it over by eminent domain. It lost its case, and then it was forced to put in a separate municipality as part of the agreement. That goes back, God, I want to say, Dennis, I think I was a kid when that happened. But Mr. Parent, you had your hand up for a while, and I'm sorry, I just saw it pop up over here, but if you want to have the floor.
Yes, I want to go back to what Irene said about the sign bylaw. We spent 2 long meetings with business owners who showed up at the meetings and gave us their opinion on changes that need to be made to help them to advertise their businesses. And we even had the building inspector there, who is the keeper of the sign bylaw, and it went nowhere. It died. It died with us, and we actually generated the interest of business owners to try to make these changes to sign bylaws, and it went nowhere. So we need to start with the rest of the boards getting on board, I guess is how we have to say that. And as far as the water department goes, I was one of the first commissioners. I sat in the courtroom when we thought we were only going to pay 2.3 million, and we were ordered to pay 6.5 million. I didn't know where I was going to get it, but we did get it. The district was formed. They do have their own meetings, and it's running great. And I think Grafton is better off for it at this point. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
That's right. And then Mr. Frisbee.
So just to go back to the water, I know, and we have 2 water districts too. It's not just one separate one, it's 2 separate ones. When was the last time you guys had that conversation with them where they said, hey, bring it to us and then we'll talk? Is there a way to revisit that? Say, hey, it's been a few years, we tried it your way. And how consistently are you guys revisiting some of these initiatives that you spend a lot of time looking into?
Well, I think once the issues are identified and we looked at them, that became more of an interaction of Tim having with the powers that be. And it was handed off. So we have not revisited that recently.
Can I suggest we do that now that we have Evan here?
Oh, absolutely. And the fact is, let me talk to you a little bit about business development. When you're in business development, and you're dealing with the same constituents, the fact is, no today doesn't mean we aren't gonna have the same conversation tomorrow because you still own the same piece of land. I still need to develop it. So a no just means not now, we'll revisit it. So that's just the nature of what it is, because we don't keep coming back to these people. We're never gonna get there.
Mr. Swenson, you had your hand up a little bit ago, and I apologize. I meant to call on you sooner. Did you have something else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, just my thoughts on, how the commission can stick closer to its mission statement. The thing that pops up to me is we have an opening on the commission, right? So, what's very apparent is development is key, right? So how do we market this opening to a developer? Let's get a developer on the commission. We can't force that, but I think that would be really good to have some knowledge there. And then, the other piece of it is is the marketing. Pamphlets and stuff like that are fine, but I think we should maybe do some investigation into how does the town get more digital in its marketing. We have all this open space. How do we get the word out in modern channels? So those are my two thoughts.
Anyone else? Ms. Hool and then Mr. Fazio.
Eric, in terms of the current opening on the commission, that is a spoken for slot that needs to be a small business owner in town. Now, I do not know if we're limited to the number of people, if we can expand the number of people and include a developer as a new member or another at-large member at a later time. But I just want to make sure and John had said that at the beginning of the meeting, the current opening is specifically for a small business owner in town, just so you know that. John, I wanted to ask you, correct me if I'm wrong, Colleen, on the water thing, wasn't the problem with the pharmaceutical companies going to be the sheer quantity they needed versus the price they might negotiate? I think there was some concern with our ability to meet that. And if I'm wrong, then please clarify that for me.
During those discussions, I was told that we had sufficient amount of water and we also had sufficient amount of sewage to handle what would be expected. So the quantity wasn't a factor.
Real quick, Mr. Fazio, followed up by Mr. Broussard, please.
Thank you. No, it was, and I'm glad I listened to other comments first, because there was a lot of commission members that are saying things that I sort of had on my list. So what I did is I kind of went through this a little bit differently, which is I looked at the current charge, and after sitting for the past year or so on this committee as the board rep, thinking about how we could potentially support this commission with utilizing the charge. So the first thing was, and this is kind of, all these things have kind of been discussed this evening. So the first one is to change from a 7-member board committee to a 9 commission, and include more business owners and real estate developers. I had also put down, and 2, I feel like we have a really great group here and we need more manpower, and we need manpower in the sense of people who are invested in other businesses in the community or developers. I feel like that would, alleviate maybe some potential work for John, because I feel like we need to sort of web ourselves out a little further than what we're doing. And if the board would consider changing from a 7-member commission to a 9, I think it's a worthy discussion. The second thing is, I don't know what the town's economic development goals and objectives actually are today. And so I feel like if I sit in EDC, I want to know, do we have a commercial district revitalization plan? Do we we don't have an updated master plan, and I'm not going to go down that road, but I feel like as a commission member, I want more information given to the people on this committee to be like, here's the goal, here's the task, here's the properties we want you to go after. Here's what's important to this board and to the planning board, and really what we want you guys to concentrate on. It's such a big task to sit on a board and be like, we need economic development. And I feel like every single person on the commission is doing their absolute best. And we're firing off what looks like could be potential. But it would be really great to have maybe a workshop discussion or some kind of discussion to ask the question, like, what do you want us to do? Like, what is there, like I said, like a commercial revitalization plan? Is there, are there certain properties we should be working on? So that's number two. And then managing the budget is on there. And, do we have any grant funded programs we could be utilizing? Perhaps we do. Perhaps, Chris McGoldrick and John are applying to grants that sometimes I don't know about, but as a committee member, I would be happy to fill out grants, federal or state grants, to allow for like beautification projects on Worcester Street, or, helping make a site more marketable. And I don't, again, like sometimes those things slip through the cracks because we're working on more important things. And then I put public awareness, that I think we need a webpage, and I think we need constant digital updates and events for the public to attend. And then as far as content, it says that we keep contact with the business community. And I think that our EDC coordinator does 99% of this. And I don't know if this is a discussion for the commission or the board, but should EDC be doing part of this? Should we be tallying the businesses out to say each member is responsible for 20 businesses in town, and call them, email them, show your face, just let them know that you're a commission member and say, how can I help support you? And just really get to know our business owners in the community. And I know that doesn't go toward new development per se. I'm talking more about keeping small businesses that we already do, but that it is part of the charge, which is why I bring it up. And then Chamber of Commerce was brought up too. And I put membership. Do we have one? Do we attend events? And I think that John does, but again, it's on the EDC charge, which since we've now hired a coordinator who's part of the group, it's again, like sitting looking at it as a charge as a select board member. I don't know how well that fits here, because I've never been to a Chamber of Commerce meeting. And then I think Irene brought this up, board should have quarterly or at least twice a year meetings with the commission, and make this a two-way street. How do we support the commission, and what is the commission planning on doing? Events, budget, etc. So we can just continue this communication pattern. So I know that was a lot, but that's what I had.
Mr. Broussard, and then Mr. Swenson, you had your hand up, I think, to respond to something earlier. Okay, Mr. Broussard, then Ms. Roy.
Yeah, so, having been here for a little over a month and a half and kind of looking at everything and then listening to you folks, who most of which a lot of which I'm meeting for right now. Economic development is the words that we say when we're in government, then we don't really understand what that means, because no one really defines it well, right? You just say economic development. No, I'm going to do some economic development. Well, it's everything all the time. That's literally what we do all the time. And so one of the things I'm hearing as I listen to all of you is that, Ed's talking about economic development over here, and we're talking about Wyman Gordon, UPS, huge tracts of land. And then, Carl's talking about some signage. And so, and these are all important things. They all dovetail together, but they're all over the map. And it makes it hard for you to understand when you say, what are we doing for economic development, what that is. And that's why we don't communicate that well, because I want to talk about UPS because it's huge and it's one big score that we have that then brings in all this revenue. But at the same time, EDC is doing business retention and, trying to get businesses through COVID, and you're doing all these other things that are a lot smaller that add up to other things. So I think that, role definition becomes very important, because one of the reasons that you hire, a town administrator is that, like, part of my role is to go out and beat the bushes and help make these connections, right? The biggest economic development project in Munson that happened in 20 years happened because I was good friends with the state rep. No other reason. There was a company looking to do business, and they said, you should talk to Evan. He's a nice guy. He'll talk to you about it. Boom. And we have it, right? So you're doing all these other things. And I'm not saying that all this other stuff isn't important, but we need to have our different layers and know what each other is doing. So like this week, we've reached out to the attorney that's in charge of UPS. I have a meeting next week with the Wyman Gordon folks. John Allen had me meet with Tufts. John's great at saying, you have a meeting today at 2 and you're meeting these people, and schmooze them, that kind of stuff. And so what I would like to see as a town administrator is for EDC to give us some marching orders of where do we need to be pinpointing the focus that you want the bureaucrats to do, the people that are full-time and they're getting paid for this, to support your mission and your vision and where you want to end up, right? It's the question of what does Grafton want to be when it grows up, right? And so when you know that direction and you turn us loose on that, we'll help you get there. But I'd really like to see that increase of communication, and you letting myself, John, Chris, tell us what you want. You want us to be talking to the water department by the end of next week? We'll make that happen. And so that's all I got, I guess.
That's right. And then Mr. Frisbee.
I just wanted to point out that EDC does have a website. I know it was mentioned earlier that you guys need one, but you have a pretty substantial one right on the town page. Is that not managed or run by you guys, or is there something you want to see done differently on that?
From my understanding, part of William's job as a communications specialist is he's going to assist us with that. So it's just a matter of things starting to gel, because Evan's been here for a minute and William's been here for a minute and a half. Also, can I answer some of Doreen's questions or comments? We are actively looking for grants. In fact, we got a local rapid recovery program grant for $50,000. This is allowing us to basically study from Grafton Grill up to, but not quite to, the Grafton Commons. So what we're going to do is we're looking at businesses in that zone, and these outside consultants are going to tell us how to help these businesses and give us a roadmap. Once they give us that roadmap, what we're going to do is we're going to take that same plan and march it around the rest of the town to help them based on the rapid recovery plan that they put together. So that's $50,000 that's not there. I do agree with Carl. We do a disappointing job in promoting what we're actually doing. It's like, I don't think you would know about this grant if I hadn't been here tonight. As far as a commission, basically, you guys are the leaders of the town. You guys are the spokespeople. If you basically are out there and you're talking to people, and your relationship with these people is personal and much deeper than the relationships I have. They may know who I am and I may talk to them, but if you've known these people for 20 years, Carl's brought people forward that he's known for a very long time, where he knows people that I simply wouldn't even get access to. As committee members, as select persons, these are people that you got to bring to my attention and to Evan's attention and introduce us. And I sell businesses outside of this. I tell people that you need to go out and meet with these people a couple of times so there's a strong handoff of this relationship, because a meeting of one time just isn't sufficient. And if you know of land that you feel that should be marketed, tell me, because I may not be aware of it.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah, and actually, John, that comment is a perfect jumping off point for I think the point that I want to make here, which is I think everybody should play to their strengths. And I think that would be the best way to go forward here. Economic development is the term we use in public life. New business is the term that we use in private life. And, you know, look, I'm charged with creating new business here in this office. There are people in this firm who this month have made tens of thousands of dollars on commission in new business in 1 month. And those guys kill it because they know people and they know people who like them and they network. And I understand that during COVID, that's all been really difficult. You know, it's really not the same. You know, you can have the website, you can do the digital marketing, you can do the search engine optimization and all that stuff, but it's not really the same as being in the same room as somebody and developing a relationship with them. So I understand that that these things can be hindered over the course of the past 12 months, and God bless people who are still able to do it. Which leads me to think that, you know, maybe it's too much, I think, to expect that EDC is going to be responsible for the next UPS. I think that's too much. What I sometimes, if I'm being candid with you, one of my concerns with EDC is that it might turn into Grafton BNI, where it's a bunch of pre-existing small business owners networking with each other, and that we might become a little too inward looking and not enough outward looking. And I don't know if that's true, but it's sort of got to be a feeling of mine lately. I think I would prefer if we did maybe expand membership a little bit to include some developers. So we're always challenging ourselves to look a little more outward looking. But there are other things that are, I think, should be outside the purview of EDC, which might be when Joe Layden was here, we had the North Grafton, South Grafton, gateways to Grafton. And there were properties we were going to develop along those lines. And we were going to work with marketing the sale of those things. And I still would like to see that being pushed forward, you know, to the extent that what this board can do is articulate a vision for what Grafton should be. I think we're well on our way. I think that we've established a commitment to infrastructure. I think we've established a commitment to home ownership here. I think we've established a commitment to education, and that if we can develop, I think, some more units here for workers to live in, then we're fulfilling our commitment, I think, to the business community, and like Evan said, to creating the conditions by which we would want to economically develop here. Certainly, I mean, if ever anyone wants to put us in a room with people, even with a mask on, and deliver the good news that is Grafton is a fantastic community and an affordable place to live, and you should definitely open a business here, I would be more than happy to do that. Look at what we've done in the past decade alone. When I moved here, I went to the inn and I was sort of complaining about the food. Like, you know, we've got pizza. And then over the course of the past 10 years, we've seen the inn's menu expand. We've seen the advent of Reunion. We've seen the advent of the Grafton Grill. And these are all places that I love eating in. And it's cuisine that, you know, you don't have to go to Worcester for anymore. And this is just over the course of the past 10 years. So the things that we're able to do now, we weren't able to do 10 years ago. This isn't the same town. We're not selling the same pitch. This is a community that you're lucky to live in. And put me in a room and let me tell that story. I'm happy to. So, you know, let's keep the lines of communication open, and we can all help each other out here and accomplish a common goal.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the idea that Doreen brought up about potentially parsing out businesses and having an actual structured program to reach out to them regularly and touch base, see what they need, get the pulse of the business community. I love the idea of paying a little bit more attention to those chambers of commerce and our involvement there. I'm not sure exactly what's being done. This whole thing is a networking game, right? And you never know where it's going to come from. It could come from that one contact that you make with somebody in the local community who happens to own a dog grooming business because they happen to know somebody else. So the further and wider we can go in reaching out and creating that visibility and those personal connections, I think we have to be doing that. So I love that idea of reach out to the businesses, and not everybody's going to be good at that. Not everybody's going to be good at going to those Chamber of Commerce meetings and kind of networking with people. So that all leads into the idea that expanding the committee to include additional members. I think that makes a lot of sense. You're bringing in additional personalities that might be good at those things. As we talk through the breadth of activities, it's not surprising, but when you add it all up and think about all of it, there's a significant amount of different types of work that can all contribute to moving the dial in terms of revenue, and really that's kind of what we're talking about. So creating that program for reach out. Chambers of Commerce, I think, I'm not sure what we're doing with the Mass Office of Business Development, but, I know in the past when we've gone to, FinCom meetings, they're always there kind of representing themselves, and they're always reaching out, trying to assist towns to bring in outside businesses, out of state businesses into state. So I think, some more involvement there, all augmented with some additional committee members, will hopefully make things a little bit more effective in just continuing to expand that web of network.
I agree with you. And pre-COVID, 2019, we hosted a lunch at Tufts University. We brought in all those stakeholders, Mass Econ, Mass Development, developers, architects. In fact, we actually exceeded the room limit and violated the fire code violation. The meeting was so successful, and I see ourselves getting back to that. We are active with the chambers. We're actually one of the few towns that actually do exhibits when they have their different B2B type events. So we're doing all that stuff. My wife has a saying that success is when opportunity meets preparation. And we have been doing that preparation.
All right, Mr. Moisen.
Colleen, you mentioned your correspondence with me and my correspondence back. Do we want to talk about that at all, or?
I think that's the next agenda item, but it's a great segue if the chair is open to it.
Yeah, I just didn't know if Sean, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? I didn't know if you had your hand up a few minutes ago. I just wanted to make sure I call upon everyone on the membership here. Oh, we can't hear you, Mr. McAbee. Your audio is not working. Nope, nothing yet. Nope. While you get that working, was there anyone else in the commission? And Sean can work on his audio. Mr. Swenson?
Yeah, just real quick, if the board is thinking about expanding membership, another position that we could dictate would be a commercial real estate broker. That's another half of the equation. That's another, they have relationships, webbed out, as other people have said.
I have a question on that, Mr. President, 1 second. So on that part of expanding into like a commercial real estate broker, I mean, would we look at somebody who actually has to be from town to be on that, or is it some of them out of town that would serve on that?
My preference is that we have a commercial real estate broker that's doing activity and doing business. And the fact that they don't live in town shouldn't be a hindrance. With that said, we're gonna have to work to get somebody to come here from out of town. because they need an incentive.
Right. Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah, I know. I think along the same lines, my only observation there is sometimes commercial real estate could be a tough role to fill. You might be looking at an empty seat for a little bit. And probably you would want to, like John said, to loosen that restriction about living in town if you were going to consider that.
Sean, did you get your audio working? Nope. Oh, boy. Maybe try exiting the meeting and coming back in. If you want something to add, we can come back to it. If the committee would like, we can move on to the correspondence between Mr. Moisen and Ms. Roy. We'll give Sean a few minutes to come back, and if you guys want to start that conversation.
All right, so I reached out to Mr. Moisten, just asking that the EDC have the discussion about increasing the number of cannabis licenses from 2 to 3 and supporting a warrant article at town meeting, under the impression that it would just generate economic development, and it seemed like a low-hanging fruit. I know it came before town meeting at one point through a citizen's petition, but I thought having support from the town would help help it move along a little bit more. We have 3 to 4 host community agreements with 3 people actively investing in town now, and we want to try to help shepherd these businesses in and act like a good town that wants to do business with people. So I shot him an email, and he wrote back that him and Mr. Allen agreed and they would have that conversation with the EDC. I don't believe the EDC has met yet to have that conversation though, so maybe they can have it now. I don't know.
No, we can definitely schedule a meeting and have a discussion. I think, again, I'm supportive of it because just to your point, Colleen, the idea that we're generating additional revenue for the town is one of our key charges. And I guess, and the other side of that is that if it helps us with the idea of not having to deal with lawsuits and so on and so forth. If one party doesn't get it after spending so much money and time and effort to get that done, then it makes things a little easier for everybody's life. And I don't know, I'm a big believer in let the best business win, let them gain it, and we'll be the benefit of the tax revenue. So we could talk about it at the committee level and or the commission level, and I'm more than happy to do that. We could schedule a meeting pronto, but I don't know if it would be appropriate for us to sponsor a warrant. I think. I don't know. I need some guidance on that. I don't have the ins and outs of the appropriate way to do that.
Mr. Moisen, I know other boards and committees have sponsored warrant articles and have asked the select board, going back as far as I can remember, about placing something on the warrant for something that you wanted to propose to the town. Personally, I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I have no problem doing that and allowing that to happen. I don't know if any rest of the board wanted to address that right away, but Mr. Moisen, Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah, I would love to see it sponsored by ADC. I think it's in the charter clearly that you guys can sponsor legislation and that you should seek permission from the select board. And from my standpoint, you have my permission, so we can talk about that as a board, whether we want to, allow that to move forward. But I would have no issue with that, and I think it would mean a lot to come from you guys and get some sponsorship from the board. I'd like some discussion about the long-term potential impact of having 3 businesses in Grafton, and also kind of the short-term competitiveness. We've, I think, successfully achieved a sense of urgency amongst the businesses, and I want to make sure that we maintain that in the short term, and also maintain that increased revenue long term. So, I'd love to hear from EDC what you think the short and long term impacts of supporting that additional 3rd license would be.
Ms. Wool and then Mr. Frisbee.
That I would want answered going into the discussion and making any decisions. As we know, part of what happened was, the town made various votes and other decisions that would limit us to having 2 businesses. and yet we signed 3 host agreements. So at least one of those people had to recognize that perhaps they weren't going to be able to open a business in Grafton. So should we be signing more host agreements? Should we be having 6 people possibly competing? And would all of those, let's say, subsequent 3 feel like, hey, you signed a host agreement with me, therefore I'm due a license, which is basically what one of the previous 3 people is saying. Something that caught my eye in reading about what happened recently was when they go for their final thing before the state, because one of the things that is somewhat unique to running a cannabis business versus, let's say, some of the other businesses in town is they have to go through a lot of hoops, jump through a lot of hoops with the state. And the state comes back to the town and says, hey, are these people in good standing with you? What exactly does that mean? Okay, in other words, if we say that, yes, they're in good standing, have we just said that, yes, they're guaranteed a license? Or have we said only that, yes, they've met the criteria that we agree to for a business, but that doesn't guarantee that they'll be able to open their business here? Okay, see the kind of the fine line between those 2 things. So I would like a better clarification of what exactly the process is, what we've opened ourselves up to and could be opening ourselves up to going forward. And so that's one part. And then I'm not even going to go into the weeds on what happened with, at least one of the people that took a host license and then seemingly to the public didn't do much with it for some time. But yeah, we're gonna need clarification on that before we want to talk about agreeing to sponsor an article to expand this. And then Matt, like you said, this is a long-term thing. This isn't just a short-term to get us through the fact that I've got 3 host agreements and 3 seemingly ready to go businesses. I have to take a longer view of this.
Real quick, Ms. Houle, just a correction. Actually, Grafton signed 4 host agreements, by the way.
Okay.
Not 3. All right. And right now, 3 out of the 4 have provisional agreements, just to make sure everyone's got those.
Okay.
Mr. Frisbee, you had your hand up after Ms. Houle. Sorry, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you.
Irene, I appreciate your intellectual inquisitiveness here, but I think the board ought to decline to be handing out legal theory about this right now. Suffice it to say, the host community provisions within the statute allow us to negotiate with anyone that we want to about getting a host community agreement. And it basically, the guidance limits us to talking about fees that we would get from them and a percentage of profits that we would get from them to deal with infrastructure and whatever other associated community costs that we might incur in dealing with their service. I think, speaking for myself, there was a belief that when this law was passed, that if you opened up a retail marijuana establishment, you might, for instance, be saddled with additional law enforcement costs, additional drug education costs, additional infrastructure costs, additional police detail costs. I think by and large, communities have not seen those. I think Leicester did initially. By and large, we have not. But that was really the scope under which we operated in. And as the only person on this board who was sitting here when we started negotiating these things, I can tell you, when people came in, that was generally the scope of inquiry. There was a little bit of additional inquiry about sources of revenue, about security and the like. But under the statute, we were not allowed to ask those questions, nor were we allowed to, not allowed to ask questions, but we weren't allowed to base our decision upon those things. Those are strictly within the purview of the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission. The Cannabis Control Commission now is going to issue the licenses as they see fit. We've determined that there are only 2 of these things that are going to be allowed in the community. And as far as I am concerned, I don't care who gets it, so long as someone moves. With each of the applicants that we had over the course of that first year, think everybody assured us that their facility would be open within the next 9 months to a year. And that's a rough recollection on my part, admittedly. But now we're going on well over 2 years and we don't have a single one done. So our position is, I think, the same as it's ever been, that you go and you build your place and you go get your license from the CCC and welcome to Grafton. And that's it. As far as what we're asking the EDC to do, we're not asking the EDC to do anything. If the EDC decides that there are applicants and spaces available and they want to sponsor the warrant, God bless you. Then go do that. I think it's a good idea. I tend to, believe it or not, get a little bit of an economic libertarian streak in me. If you own land and you have a business opportunity, go pursue it, so long as it's not hurting anybody else. If you're operating within the confines of the law, then God bless you. I feel like our limiting these establishments artificially is a sort of a contravention of my own personal theory. I don't understand why, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't understand why this is the only business in town that we're extracting a profit from. I don't understand why, if a liquor store wants to open, we're not taking 5% of their profits. What's the difference? I think that we're standing in the way here of economic development by putting an artificial limit on these things. I think if somebody wants to open one and it fails because there's 2 other, 3 other, 4 other businesses in town that do the same thing, then shame on them. You're an idiot. You haven't completed a business plan. Nobody else would do the same thing. Would you open the 5th or 6th or 7th tap studio in town? No, you wouldn't. There isn't the business to support it. And that's the reason why, for a long time, you wouldn't get businesses like Reunion or the Grafton Grill to open, because everybody just assumed that there wasn't the populace in town that would eat out enough. Well, now there is. So I want to get out of the way of everybody else opening up in town and allow them to do their thing. So that's my position on this. You can talk to legal counsel about the virtues of our legal position. I'm not legal counsel, but my position on this is pretty straightforward. You want to open, go open. Go talk to the CCC, get your license, and that's it.
Mr. Pound?
Yeah, I did a little research for tonight's meeting, and in the MJ Market, I think that's what it's called, 13 Centennial Drive, plans on opening up in May. I understand their building is finished. They had a limited amount of work that they had to do inside because structurally it was pretty well set up. And I'm going to say something that I never thought I'd say, but I agree with Mr. Prisby. We need to take a libertarian view here, especially on the EDC. I mean, let the market determine who stays open. I mean, restricting the amount of businesses is not the way to go. And I would fully support going for a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th license if that's what we need to do. And I mean, obviously, it'd be counterintuitive and counterproductive for the EDC not to take that stand, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Roy, then Mr. Maxwell.
I was thinking about raising my hand. I didn't yet, so I'll let Mr. Fazio
I
go
thought
first.
you had your hand up before Mr. Fazio. I'm sorry, Mr. Fazio.
Thank you. And Colleen, I didn't see your hand and I was like, did she have her hand up or is it just getting late? So I just, I'm not opposed at all to having the EDC sponsor this article. However, I'm curious from board members, maybe specifically you, Ms. Roy, since you kind of started us down this path, why not have the select board sponsor it? Do you think EDC just would be would hold more weight for this article, or, because if the select board were to sponsor this article, let's just say this is kind of how my brain's working, the EDC could also support it. You know what I mean? So I'm just, what kind of brought you down to, let's just ask the chair of EDC.
It was 6 one way, half dozen another. EDC is charged with economic development, and bringing in economic development is exactly what increasing the number of cannabis licenses will do. So to me, it made sense to start there rather than cut them out of the process and we just do it. They're under our purview, and let's reach out to them first. All I did was ask them to have the discussion. And I got pretty immediate positive feedback to say that, yeah, they would get behind it most likely. And then we could, show support to their article. And now you have 2 boards and committees in the town saying that this is a good idea and why, and that's going to hold so much more weight than just a citizen's petition trying to do it on their own.
Sure. Yeah, no. And I think that's, well stated. I guess I think of it doing it the opposite way. Like the board would take care of the article and then EDC would vote, also support the article. Personally, for me, I have a different view, like it or not, than an economic libertarian. I hear where you guys are coming from. I like more process, but at the same time, I also, as you all know, am a big believer in public input, and I would never not support a warrant article going to town meeting for the people to vote. And I don't care how many times it goes on, that's what it's there for. And I feel like I would never, obstruct that from happening. So I'm in support of EDC voting on it. I'm in support of the board voting on it. I was just trying to see where you got to this conclusion, and thank you for your answer.
All right. I'm going to try to kind of wrap this up and get an action plan here with the boards here. Mr. Alton, you got a question?
Yeah, I'll be brief. So I see this as significantly different than the last couple of votes that we had. The last couple of votes that we had very specific projects. And this is not attached to any particular project. So I see this as very, very different in that sense, and also very different in the sense that it would be sponsored not by a citizen petition, but by a government entity, and obviously would have hopefully broad support. So I think it's very different. I like the EDC route. I think it gives EDC a little bit more visibility and an opportunity to have a little stronger voice at town meeting. But I'm kind of with Colleen. I could go either way on it.
Okay. Sean, did you get your audio working? Nope. Oh man. I'm going to wrap this up a little bit here. Mr. Allen.
To answer Ed's question, as far as I know, there's 2 businesses that actually have legal limits. One is liquor stores and the other are cannabis. Other than that, I'm not aware of towns putting limits on the number. Number 2, you asked why the town collects tax revenue from cannabis businesses we don't collect it from liquor stores or other businesses. I don't know how to diplomatically put it, so I'll put it in simple terms. I think it was a bribe to allow towns to do cannabis businesses. Just statistically, to put everybody in the right mindset, talking with some of these cannabis owners, the way they explained it to me is it's sort of like beer. Different people like beer, but yet there's 1,000 types of different beer because different beers appeal to different people. According to the Cannabis Control Commission, they keep statistics on the sales of each store. And on average, based on the sales of each store, the towns are collecting about $295,000 in revenue per store. Now, clearly, more established stores are producing more revenue to the towns than a new store because there's a ramp-up period, but that's just what the Cannabis Control Commission's numbers state.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Allen. So just a follow-up action item here with regards to sponsoring a warrant article. I mean, is there any board members that object to being a joint sponsorship with EDC on a warrant article that they would draft for 3 licenses? No? All right. So I think for a follow-up item here, if we can, we'll reserve a spot on the town meeting warrant. Yeah, for June. And in the meantime, if we could work up some language for the town to consider to make that number from 2 to 3, and we can bring it back for further discussion if we need to, if we have any further questions about those implications. Mr. Broussard, Mr. Prisby.
Do you want me to work on that?
I think ideally, if you could take the point and just make sure we've got the correct wording and just the intent of what this board is discussing tonight, that would be great.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I was clear on taking that, and I'll make sure in the morning we block off a warrant article to make sure we've reserved the space.
Mr. Prisby?
Yeah, this is a little bit off topic. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm involved with a client who is doing business in a coastal community in Massachusetts, and it involves something that we were talking about earlier, which is the issuance of one-day entertainment licenses, or actually entertainment licenses, period. And I can see very clearly, as I represent my client, how the town went wrong here. And their community started issuing guidance and regulations concerning the issuance of entertainment licenses without actually talking to any of the businesses. What they did was they sort of solicited opinions from neighbors who were being affected and came up with a policy. When you're on that side of it, it becomes blatantly obvious that, oh my God, what are you doing? You're in the middle of COVID. You want businesses to thrive. That's an important part of the community. Why wouldn't you take their input? So I'm sort of throwing this out there now because you guys all sat through the conversation that we had earlier. How is it that we can engage the business community in Grafton concerning post-COVID activity for things that have changed over the course of the past year that consumers might still enjoy? And that's sort of a long way of me saying that, look, everybody likes eating outdoors when the weather's nice. And it's something that people are going to probably want to carry with them after COVID is done. And, these are changes that maybe people wouldn't have wanted to make but for COVID, but here we are. And how is it that we can work with these businesses that need these accommodations in a way that is constructive and also takes into consideration the needs of the community? And I feel like your committee is the best boots on the ground that we have to reach out to business owners and sort of gauge their needs, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and maybe what they would like to see going forward. Is there a constructive way that we can do that and work with you guys to do that?
I think that's a great idea, Ed. I think, the idea that we do some prep work for the future on the idea that these folks might want to have continued doing business outside and have outdoor activities. I think John and I and the rest of the committee could probably noodle on that a little bit at the next meeting and figure out a way in which to maybe do a survey to find out, like you said, what went right, what went wrong, ideas on how to improve, things that you wouldn't want to do next time, et cetera, et cetera. That's easily done. I think that's something we can do pretty quickly.
That would be great. That'd be great.
The EDC did pass a motion to request that the planning department study zoning around the entertainment outdoor seating. So the EDC's already started the process.
And I watched one of the last planning board meetings, and there was some back and forth about land use and changing the land use. And so it may well be that ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is sort of a zoning change and a use table change. But the world has changed over the course of the past 12 months, and we need to change along with it. And if this is something that people enjoy, and again, if we're going to be business friendly here, then it's probably something we want to take a look at and take into account the needs and opinions of the people who have been burdened with the regulations that we put on them over the course of the past 12 months in order to keep people safe. And, you know, I don't apologize for that, but at the same time, I recognize that it has been a burden. And so that's a conversation that we should keep having, I think, as the months go on.
In conclusion, may I tell you about a program that's in the process of being rolled out to help restaurants?
Sure, yeah, we've got one more thing on our agenda today I want to be able to spend some time on, but please go ahead.
Okay, the town of Grafton's purchased $300 in gift certificates from all of the restaurants in town. Each gift certificate is $10. What we're doing is we're taking those gift certificates and distributing them amongst small retailers in town. And the retailers say have an average purchase price, say, of $50. If somebody spends, say, 75 or 100, and each retailer is deciding the amount, then they get a $10 gift certificate. So this does really two things. One is it helps restaurants out by purchasing the gift certificates and getting customers in the restaurants. And two, it's also providing incentives for people to spend more money at the local retailers in town. It's in the process of being rolled out and it should be up and going before the end of the month. And once it's up and going, I'd like to come before you and promote it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen.
Thank you.
All right, well, just to wrap up here, I think there's a couple of key takeaways. We'll follow up with the committee. I think one of them was the, consider changing the charge and the makeup of membership. In addition to warrant language for additional cannabis, the town meeting warrant to consider. Any other takeaways that the board feels that we need to follow up on? I think those were the two main points. Mr. Fazio?
Did we vote on the charge tonight?
Well, I figure we might want to have a discussion on it with the board and discuss like how we want to make up that charge.
Okay.
Do we want to discuss, the details of a commercial developer, those types of things. I don't know if the board is, appropriately prepared to discuss that tonight if we don't have anything in front of us, but that's my feeling. We can bring it back to another meeting.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Carl, Eric, Dennis, Sean, John, and Irene, thank you very much for taking the time. I think this was a great discussion. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I think there's a lot of areas I think that we can keep the lines of communication open. And, to the point earlier, don't just say like, hey, we've got this economic development committee and they're doing their thing. So let's make it a point to leverage our select board rep and have more regular attended workshops and discussions moving forward. Thank you very much for attending tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Last up on our agenda tonight was asked to bring this forward with regards to select board committee annual reappointments and a policy around that. This was asked to be brought up on tonight. I'm going to try to summarize real quick that this is only about select board authorized appointments. This isn't about other boards and committees where they have their appointment process for representation in other committees. So we're here to talk about that tonight. As you know, every year, our board, we look at the reappointment process of people who serve on these committees. And one of the ideas was to discuss, do we want to see a policy change of how we go about maybe potentially advertising those positions as, hey, they're open positions, anyone can really apply for them, and the board can discuss about whether or not, do they want to appoint the same person or do they want to appoint somebody new for, various reasons. And they don't have to be, anything personal. It could be looking for a change of direction that the board feels that it wants to take. But I wanted to open the discussion up tonight with the board and get some input. And if there's directions on a policy, we can work on drafting something for us to consider at a future meeting before we reach the end of the fiscal year. So does anyone would like to comment first? Ms. Roy.
Yeah, I would be in full support of when appointments are up, that it's advertised that all of these seats are available and people have to reapply for their seats. It's our version of term limits, right? Just to make sure that everybody who's actively doing it still wants to do it and they don't feel like they're chained to this. They have an opportunity to walk away if they want to, as well as open it up to everybody to say, hey, what opportunities are out there? And we really need to start by cleaning up our website. Our website has 67, if you go on it right now, 67 boards and committees. Of that, there's 50 that we appoint. So if we're talking about just those 50, there's only about 27 that are active. Some listed on it say, you know, it's been dissolved or it's gone. So we really should remove those so it doesn't add confusion to people who may be looking to volunteer and serve in Grafton. And when you break it down to that level, it's not going to be that much work to go through the process of reappointing people because it won't be that many seats.
That's a good point. Anyone else have any other comments? Mr. Fazio.
I 100% agree with everything Colleen said. I think, yeah, exactly that. I won't repeat everything, but I think that it would be, when I look at the page, it's very confusing. I can imagine how it is for residents. And I think it gives opportunity for people to reevaluate whether they want to sit on a board or committee or perhaps volunteer somewhere else. And it, you know, there might be someone who sits on EDC, for example, who says, boy, I really want to also be on this, but there's not an opening, but maybe there will be, and I can switch. And, you know, we have the same, seems to be the same group of volunteers in town. It would, I think, be a better way to help recruit new people as well.
Anybody else, Mr. Austin?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should be sort of checking in prior to, you know, prior to doing reappointments or appointments to see, you know, if there's an opinion on, at least in some of the key boards and committees, if they're looking for specific skill sets or especially when there's openings. I think we should be reaching out. We should be encouraging diversity. I think is should be one of our goals, to try to bring in new people, try to bring in new perspectives. You know, the best, most functional boards and committees tend to be one that are fairly diverse, diverse in opinion and age, gender, you know, all sorts of different directions. They tend to come to better decisions. So I think there's a lot that we could be doing, you know, to help encourage that. And part of it, I think, is where there are, particularly where there are openings, we should be reaching out to say, hey, who are you looking for? And then we can all sort of spread the word and we can look around. You know, we had a conversation earlier about economic development and, you know, potentially real estate developers or local business owners, or, you know, there might be a, you know, certain type of person that we're looking for. And some of these positions are fairly skilled. If we talk about things like Board of Health, we want to have diversity, but we also want to have certain skill sets. So I think generally we should be paying much more attention and trying to have an impact, I think, on the effectiveness of these appointees on their various, you know, entities.
Mr. Frisbee.
Yeah, so as your longest tenured serving select board member, soon to be done with this in just, I think, one short month, let me lend you some of the wisdom that I've ignored over the course of the past 3 years. We did a thing a couple of years ago where we had each and every committee come in over the course of a year and give us a status report on what they were doing, what they were up to. And it was very well intentioned, but like most meetings that I've ever been in my entire life privately, it could have been an email, right? I mean, that's been the joke over the course of the past year, right? Like every Zoom meeting that you've been in probably could have been an email. I think what this change that we're talking about would do, practically speaking, if you just left it open and had people reapply for their positions, would get rid of some of the awkwardness around a chair of that particular committee being unwilling to pursue the removal of a member who maybe wasn't showing up, or would allow this committee to consider openly a change in the direction of a particular group without castigating any one individual. You know, so if you can just advertise a position by saying, well, we've got 3 applicants for this particular group. Here's this one applicant. They've done a wonderful job over the course of the past 5 years, but we're looking for maybe something a little bit different out of this. Let's have an open discussion about what each applicant is bringing. I think that gets you closer to where you want to be. And I say this with full knowledge of what we all know to be true, which is this is a small town and we get the same 100 people over and over and over again. And, you know, bridges when they're burned tend to burn for quite a little bit. So I think the best way to do it is to just leave the application process open, not make it a chore for us to have everybody come in as a committee and explain where they are, but just, you know, as tenured members and new applicants explain what they can bring to a particular committee over the course of the next few years and the direction that they would like to see that group go. I think that would be helpful. It also would afford us the opportunity to avoid what happened to me, which is to say, well, we don't like this person and we're just going to talk about this person over here. And I know that that's happened to other people as well. So yeah, I think that would be a solid process to follow.
Yeah, Mr. President, I agree with you. I mean, here's a classic example tonight. You and I had a disagreement, but it doesn't mean that, you know, we don't work well together. And I think that having, you know, committees that can participate and have really good discussions and to be able to be effective, I think is important. You know, one of the big concerns I have is extended absences. I always feel that when someone misses more than a couple of meetings, especially when you meet once a month, or even I've heard an issue from a resident who's trying to start a business in Grafton, had to wait almost an hour and a half for quorum to appear for Conservation Commission, so they can move their project forward. You know, those are the types of stories that I hear. Okay, I don't know the full facts of that, but that's the type of membership that, you know, I would like to address and get people who are, you know, who are committed to doing and saying what they say they're going to do. And you know, I don't think it has to be, you know, to your sense, like we have to interview like every person that comes along. I think, you know, our process in which, you know, you can apply for membership gives people, you know, an opportunity to just give a narrative. To your point, Mr. Often, you know, specify the, you know, the special skill sets that they feel that would be applicable to that committee. I think that would be interesting, right? You know, almost like reading, you know, just a summary of each applicant that's coming in, and the board can decide whether or not it, you know, it wants to just go ahead and make its appointments, or if it wants to even call in and talk to a couple people just to get some clarifications. I think it's our purview. I really do. And I really think that this discussion opens that up, where it's not just an automatic renewal process just because you're putting your name back in and you're interested, or you have to submit a resignation for their vacancy to appear. And it gives, I mean, you know, it gives other people an opportunity to maybe step down, do something else, or, you know, some person who's talented who maybe was reluctant to try to, you know, how do I get on this committee? And I also think it's that whole advertising piece of it too. We have a lot of committees, and to Ms. Roy's point, I just went on the, you know, page and I saw 50 that the select board appoints. And I think there's about a dozen of those. I think like the board should have a discussion around whether or not are these committees still applicable today. So like the what if committee, that was the whole LPG propane, you know, facility there in North Grafton from the railroad. I don't even remember the last time they may have met.
2015. I checked every committee.
It's like Colleen's probably got a spreadsheet, and you know, and can list there it is. But I really think we need to address that, and I think we should prune it if it's necessary. If we still feel it's relevant, then we keep it and we advertise and we get new people to join. Mr. Broussard.
I know William and Joanne met, I think it was prompted by Colleen's email earlier, and started cleaning up a lot of that. So inactive committees and committees that they'll bring back to you and say, okay, I don't think this one meets anymore. This doesn't exist. No one's met on this for a decade. And they're going to get a lot of that cleaned up to bring that back to you. And I know to just further parse that out, I know William's been talking all week to two different website companies. One is the one that we already have as a platform, and another one which was soliciting us that I don't think we're going to go with. But at the end of the day, the intent is to comb through everything that's on that website, get rid of all the dead wood, and then figure out how to better make those pages relevant.
Mr. Often?
Mr. Prasad, if I can just ask, while you're doing that, if you guys could be thinking about accessibility of the website.
Yes.
I know that may be a bit of a stretch, but certainly if you're talking to companies about that, if there's any services that they could provide to help, better access on readers and whatnot, that's something that has been coming up on disability quite a bit.
Yep. And so William has been pursuing that with both companies in that conversation. Awesome. Our website has quite a bit of capability to do that. I just don't think we've been utilizing it properly. And so we'll be making a big push on that as well.
Yeah, it's just something that needs to be actively managed. And
Yep.
I don't think it's really been on anybody's radar, and we haven't had the personnel to sort of deal with it. So
Right.
I look forward to that. Thanks.
Any other question? Ms. Roy?
Can we also take a look at the new citizen activity form? Like, why is it called new citizen? Why isn't it just called citizen activity form? And one of the questions it asks is, how much time do you have available? I feel like that's kind of awkward. It might scare people off. So I don't know, I have 6 hours, I have 1 hour, I have a half hour. I mean, every board and committee is going to be different. I think, and if you're interested in that board and committee, you probably know how much commitment you're putting. So I don't know, I guess cleaning that up a little bit too would be advisable.
That's important because you want people to volunteer before they know how much time that they're going to invest. Get the yes first, then ask them how much time that they have. That's key.
And how much does the position pay? I think that's important. But that's why we all do this, right? Mr. Fazio?
Yeah, just a follow up too. We all know these people in town that have these talents and aren't involved in local government at all, that we think like, oh my gosh, they would be so great for this committee, and there's not an opening, so I feel like this also, we're able to talk to people and understand their skill sets and their interests, and get people to participate in their government in their town too. So I think it's a great idea. My question is about the timeline for it, and I don't know if this is something we're going to discuss tonight, Mr. Chairman, but are we going to do it like June, everybody has to reapply, or is it going to be staggered? Are we going to determine that?
It's up to the board. It's not solely up to me, but Ms. Roy, you want to?
I would like to see a policy written and voted on sometime in May, so that on June 1st, we can start advertising right away that on June 30th, we'll be making new appointments. So it gives everybody 1 month heads up to say, hey, if you're on this, if you're already appointed, get your application back in because you need to reapply. And if you're not and you're interested, look at all these seats that are available right now. So the website would need to be cleaned up in May, and our policy would need to be written and voted on in May, and then hit the ground running on June 1st. So on June 30th, we're hopefully seeing some new faces.
There we go. That's a great plan.
Love that idea.
And I think it's also important to, we somehow, effectively communicate that to all the boards and committees that we appoint, and let them know through, once we get the policy that, here it is. So that way, no one's caught off guard or said they didn't receive something, because I'm sure that will happen. I know it's inevitable, but I think that's doable. Okay.
That sounds like maybe an opportunity for Mr. Blake as well, for changing our policy and opening up sort of community participation in a slightly different way. That might be just a good thing to communicate out.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? So I'm thinking, have something in front of us on the May 4th meeting. May the 4th be with us. Okay. I know, that's the second time I made that joke today, Evan.
It is. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, oh, it's the second time.
My dad jokes today. Yeah, all right. Okay, is there any other questions or concerns around what this means? How we will, I think the other part we would have to do too, Mr. Broussard, is once we agree on the policy, just the logistics on the back end, we may need to have some discussions on, how is that going to be managed going forward? And, we would like, I think once we get to that point, we would like to hear from you probably at or during that meeting, once you see we approve that language, maybe the following meeting or workshop, you can discuss just internally how you and the staff will manage these noticeable changes.
Okay.
All right. All right. If there's anything else. All right. Wow. I want to thank everyone. I thought we had some really great discussion tonight with EDC. Just to circle back on the whole outdoor entertainment thing, I think we need to bring that back to the table and discuss further and keep that going. And I am open to suggestions perhaps on the best way I understand it's in planning's hands right now, maybe a potential workshop date in May with planning, just to see or hear maybe what their thoughts are on what would that look like moving into like something permanent. It may be too soon, but I don't know what the board's desire is on looking at that as a May workshop item. Ms. Roy, Mr. Frisbee.
When we do have that workshop, in addition to planning, can we get fire and police in there just to talk about the safety aspect of it all?
So I was going to say, I want to have that sooner. I agree. Like, what are the criteria of how they determine that? Because I think that's got far-reaching other implications, outside of the one example tonight. But I don't know if the board wish. I don't want to wait till May 4th on that one. I want to work with. I guess that's the first. We have a meeting on the 20th, and it might be too soon. I'll work with Mr. Broussard on when we can bring that forward. But I would like to have that sooner as well.
I think if we need to have a conversation with PD and fire, I can make that happen before the 20th for sure, if that's what the board wants.
I would definitely want that input before we consider any additional licenses.
I would agree with that.
Okay, I'll reach out to the chief and the, what do you call it? FPO that does the inspections. Oh, I think that's what you're calling it, right? FPO. Yeah.
Fire protection officer?
Yeah. I'll reach out to both of them tomorrow and have that conversation.
Okay. All right. If there isn't anything else, I think that's our follow-up. We'll work on the warrant language, policy for appointments, and we'll have perhaps a charge for us to discuss on the 20th as well for EDC expansion. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much. I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Great, second to adjourn. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often.
Austin, aye.
Mr. Prisby.
Okay.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.